our guest who actually agreed to come and share with us some experience, Miss Ngeleni Dweba from Sporen Fisher, who is one of our colleagues used to work with us here at the ARC, and Mr. Africa from University of Western Cape, and lastly, our guest, Ms. Kineile Khanane. She will be sharing with us her story when it comes to the sorghum revolutions next. And I want to thank colleagues to say welcome to this webinar, and feel free to engage as we take this journey for the webinar, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Motsi. As she has indicated, we have such a conglomerate of amazing speakers doing great things in the IP space. More than anything, they're also youth. And I just want to highlight the fact that you don't have to be youth to necessarily join the webinar, but you just have to be young at heart. So I also look forward to the 3 amazing speakers today in our webinar. And without any waste of time, we will go to the first presentation, and that will be done by Mr. Luan Africa from the University of Western Cape, and he is a technology transfer specialist in the technology transfer office. Luan, the stage of floor is yours.
Thanks, Mashudu. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, just give me 1 second to share my presentation. Just for the sake of saving some bandwidth, I'm not going to be sharing my video.
Thanks, Luan. We can see your presentation.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks to you, Mashudu, and the organizers of this webinar for inviting me to give a brief overview of the role of technology transfer at universities, but also just to give you sort of a brief overview of my journey in technology transfer. So as Mashudu has mentioned, I'm a technology transfer specialist at the University of the Western Cape, but just a little bit about me. So my educational background is mostly in the medical sciences, but I do also have a postgraduate diploma in business administration. So just for sort of background, I initially wanted to pursue a research career, sort of a traditional research career where I would do laboratory-based research, write publications, supervise students, and so on. But as I moved up in the ranks through postgraduate studies, I just constantly had this feeling that it wasn't exactly the space that I would be able to function in most optimally. So yeah, I mean, technology transfer, the technology transfer career path, I stumbled across it serendipitously. So it was completely unplanned. And the way I got into it was through a technology transfer internship. So this is essentially the trajectory or the path that I've followed to date. So I started off with a technology transfer internship while I was still a postgraduate student. And that essentially exposed me to the entire spectrum of activities within the technology transfer profession, all the way from identifying leads, from research projects, looking at the potential of protecting intellectual property, and then all the various commercialization aspects of technology transfer. That also included a lot of exposure to university spin-out companies. And then after the technology transfer internship, I was lucky enough to secure a junior technology transfer officer position in the office where I was doing the internship. And yeah, there was a full-time position with a little bit more responsibility, or a lot more responsibilities, actually. The internship was a very short-term, part-time contract. So the tech transfer officer job was a full-time 8 to 5 job where I had my own small portfolio, but I also helped to support other people within the tech transfer team on some of their projects where additional capacity was needed. After the technology transfer officer job, I managed to secure a tech transfer officer job, which was a little bit more senior with some more responsibilities. And then that led me to essentially the position where I'm in now, where I'm a tech transfer specialist, which is a much more senior position with a lot more responsibilities. And I've also got the responsibility of managing some internal seed funds to help the research that's identified in the different laboratories to develop their products or services to a point where it's a little bit more attractive to um, investors or potential partners that would like to assist in the development of the technology or the innovation. So that's just very, very broadly the journey that I've taken. Um, so I think one thing that I do want to highlight is the fact that the technology transfer or the IP management and commercialization landscape, especially in the higher education system in South Africa, it's a very small industry. And I think we're always looking for new blood to enter the system. So I would strongly recommend any of you listening today just to touch base with your technology transfer officers, because I'm sure that there's all sorts of opportunities for you to learn and get exposed to the various aspects of technology transfer and IP management. And for all you know, it might be something that you would like to do from a career perspective. It is a very, very collegial environment. Everyone knows everyone within the industry, and we're always willing to help people at whatever institution they come from. So from time to time, I get requests from other universities in the Eastern Cape or in KZN or even in Gauteng, because they might want to know what our best practices are. Maybe they'd like to find out more about a particular case that we've worked on because they are dealing with something similar. So we try to help everyone out as much as possible, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create as much impact from the research that is being conducted at our universities. So it doesn't really matter which university we work at, we're all working towards a common goal. So yeah, I'm going to jump straight into technology transfer in the universities and the role that we play. So just looking at these various pieces of equipment or innovations. So what they all have in common is that they are innovations that came out of universities. So these just give you an indication of where the research was done, upon which these innovations were built. And also it gives you an idea of when the innovations actually entered the market. So you can see, especially for the medical science related things, there's quite a long lead time because of how regulated the industries are. So it's very different in other industries like the ICT kind of sector, where the development time is much quicker, so you can get something into the market much, much faster. But that aside, these two examples are obviously very, very topical. I think a lot of people know about this because of the rapid development time of these vaccines. But the underlying technologies that led to the development of these various types of vaccines came out of universities. So University of Pennsylvania and Oxford University. So essentially, what is technology transfer and innovation for those of you that are not too familiar with it? So technology transfer, a lot of people use it a lot of people use it interchangeably with innovation. Some people call the tech transfer offices the innovation offices. But essentially, tech transfer and innovation are very, very closely tied. So this is just a general description or description of what innovation is. So it's got to do with the successful implementation of new or improved products, processes, or services derived from new ideas and inventions, which would typically result in the creation of social or monetary value. And this implementation is done through technology transfer. So we essentially act as a bridge between university research and societal needs. So this just goes to show that the diagram shows that it's a cyclical kind of process or a back and forth kind of process. So there's constant engagement between the university and society, and yeah, it's a situation where societal needs guide what's going on in the university or vice versa. So this kind of collegial partnership kind of situation. And then this is just a sort of very general description of or definition of what technology transfer is. And this is from the Association of University Technology Managers, which is one of the largest tech transfer management professionals association in the US. So it just states that tech transfer is the process of transferring scientific findings from one organization to another for the purpose of further development and commercialization. So again, that whole idea of being a bridge between university research and societal needs. So a lot of people ask, why bother with technology transfer? And there are various benefits. I'm just going to get them all up onto the screen now. So it helps to disseminate or transfer knowledge to a wide community. Besides, and that can be society or industry. That's for the optimization of research value. And then it's also for recognition and reward. So innovative or entrepreneurial researchers could get more recognition or rewards for the type of work that they do. So increasing recognition for their research or the particular researcher or the institution. So growing the reputation of a particular institution or researcher, and that reputation sometimes attracts industry partners wanting to work with a particular researcher. And then, of course, there's the potential for additional income, and that's to support additional university research activities, amongst other things. So I think the bottom line is that we're all about impact. So it doesn't necessarily need to be monetary impact. It can be societal impact. So impact in the broadest sense. So all about contribution to social and economic development through new products or processes. So just a little bit of a reality check. And we try to do this because there are a lot of myths and a lot of misinformation floating around about technology transfer. So it's generally not a major money spinner for universities. So the major impact of tech transfer is not, for the most part, within the institution. Because if we sign a license, excuse the dog that's barking in the background, I'm sorry about that. So if a university signs a license with a potential partner and there's a 5% royalty built into the license and the university gets that 5% income, or they get a 5% equity stake, it's a pretty good deal for the university. And that means that 95% of the economic impact happens outside of the university. So that's in society. And that's extremely important because I mean it's growing the economy. It's helping to increase tax revenue generation through businesses that are taxed through additional sales of products or services. It's jobs are being created and so on. So it goes to show how impact focused we actually are. So in terms of what intellectual property is, I'll say very little about this because Koengile is going to say quite a bit about it. So essentially, all of your research outputs from university research is considered intellectual property. And I mean, it's everything from the data you collect to databases, diagrams, techniques, questionnaires, algorithms, you name it. Everything is underpinned by intellectual property. It's just always a situation where certain types of intellectual property are protectable, or you can develop them into products and services, others not. So the role of technology transfer the role of IP, excuse me, in technology transfer, I mean, it's absolutely fundamental. It underpins every single aspect of what we do, and that's whether it's protected or not. I mean, IP is what is transferred or what is traded when we actually sign a deal with a company or spin out a company based on university research. So even if the university may not consider protecting IP a priority, just needs to be taken note of that. Protected IP has a lot of value to industrial partners, and it's often a prerequisite to entering into any kind of relationship, partnership, or deal with a company. So these are just the various types of IP. I think patents are some of the most widely known. As I said, I'm not going to go into detail with this because our colleague from Spoor and Fisher will elaborate on these. Copyright is becoming quite a hot topic nowadays with all of the ICT software AI-related developments. You get registered designs, and then trademarks. So if you see this R symbol, then you know a particular trade name or brand is trademarked and it's registered. Plant breeders' rights is probably something that's quite relevant in the ARC context, especially for those that are developing new plant varieties through traditional breeding methods. And then trade secrets are a little bit difficult in the university context because it's a very much knowledge sharing environment. So yeah, it's a bit tricky to deal with, but we do deal with them from time to time. So yeah, it's therefore crucial for universities to manage their IP in a way to make some kind of impact in society or contribution to society. So this is just very broadly the functions of a technology transfer office. A lot of this is very much UWC focused, but very broadly applicable. A lot of offices do offer the same kind of services or fulfill these types of functions. So there's a TTO support role through, and that's got to do with securing funding or completing R&D. And then the core functions is innovation management, protection of IP, commercialization through licensing or formation of spin-out companies, and also managing all the benefits sharing related agreements to UWC and the researchers or whatever institution and its researchers. Yeah, it's got to do with all of these various things. We do deal quite a lot with legal agreements. So you have to have a certain degree of legal knowledge, a working knowledge, but not necessarily be an expert because we work quite well with legal colleagues, whether they're external counsel or the internal legal offices. So we generally have a pretty good working relationship with legal colleagues. So this is just a very simplified tech transfer process, and this is by no means a linear process. So there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of iteration, a lot of reiteration. So it obviously starts off with the research and development, and then which would lead to an invention disclosure, which is a document that describes whatever innovation the researchers have come up with in as much detail as possible. And then there's various stages of evaluation and decision making. And that's to determine whether or not it's worthwhile to move ahead with protecting IP and with trying to commercialize a technology or an innovation. So you see decisions all along the way. So it's by no means by no means a lateral or linear process. So it's very dynamic and things change quite quickly depending on what the markets tell us, what the state of the art is in a particular field, and so on. And then commercialization, where I spend a lot of my time, and that's got to do with licensing to existing companies, licensing to a startup, sale of IP, which is a little bit tricky. And then after deals have been made, we also do post-deal monitoring. And there's some decisions around post-deal monitoring as well, and that's got to do with companies meeting specific milestones and so on. So I've been talking a lot about commercialization. And for those of you that are not too familiar with the concept, it's a process of introducing new products, methods, services into the market. And a big part of it is identifying the applicable market and also the most valuable market or market segment, because sometimes a platform technology, a particular technology can be so broadly applicable. You need to go and decide on which is going to be the most valuable market segment to target. So it's got to do with having to sell the invention to that particular market by positioning it in a particular way. And I've already spoken about these different routes of commercialization. So a lot of what we do in tech transfer in the South African context has got to do with licensing to a particular company. Startups, we are trying as much as we can to promote the formation of startups. And we also try to keep abreast of what's going on internationally from a startup perspective and try to learn as much as we can from international contexts. And I think it's also noteworthy to mention that South Africa is actually doing pretty well from a technology transfer perspective if you compare what we are doing in our developing world context to what is going on in the so-called first world. So what we are doing is comparable to what's going on in the US and in the European context. And obviously, we've got our own contextual issues and some economic struggles, but I think we're doing a pretty decent job in the tech transfer industry. And that's essentially my high-level overview of the role of tech transfer in the university space or the research council space. And just again, I would like to encourage all of you to have a chat with your tech transfer officers. I know a lot of us try to do as much marketing and awareness as we can because we want to try to grow the industry. And I really think that it's a great career path to follow if laboratory research or a traditional research career isn't what you would like to pursue. And also, it broadens your perspective on things because a lot of people only work on the research side of things and they don't necessarily have the full understanding of what it takes to get a particular product out or a particular piece of research developed into a product or a service. So tech transfer really does broaden your perspective and make you see how what is being done in the university context, how that can actually fit into the real world, how it can actually make a meaningful impact on society. So that's my story. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Luan. That was such a wonderful presentation. And I just love how your story started in the tech transfer journey, is that you actually started as an intern, whereas, and how it was just, you just bumped into the field itself. And I share the same sentiments myself. As for me, it was just sheer luck. I just applied for a job. It said senior administrator, and it didn't say as to what it entails. And then that was it. And we are always speaking about the lack of capacity in our offices. And what you said in your presentation is that we are always looking out for new blood, right? And my question to you is, how can we as TTOs absorb that new, what platforms can we create for people who are stuck in the lab, stuck in a sense of they don't have a broader perspective of the tech of what we do, and also should they want to be interested, what platforms can we create as offices for researchers or scientists who want to join this field?
Thanks for your question, Mashudu. So I think what a previous director of mine always used to say that technology transfer is a contact sport. So it's a situation where you need to be in the passages, in the labs, trying to meet as many people that are actively doing research in the different departments. So trying to create as much awareness and build relationships with people, because a lot of time I think people are scared because we're just that office that deals with all of the IP related things, and commercial stuff scares some of the researchers that we work with. So just putting sort of a friendly face to the name and trying to show that the office can add a lot of value, and just try to show that you can provide support to all the non-traditional research related things. So all the commercial things, the legal stuff. The legal things scare people. I'm sure that a lot of researchers you deal with are not comfortable with the legal side of things. So it's just a matter of reassuring people that you'll be with them every step of the way, if that's the way, if they would like to enter into the innovation pipeline. And also another thing that we at least try to do at UWC is sometimes we'll do a pizza Friday and we'll have sort of an informal IP talk or tech commercialization related talk. And we do, I think it's a biannual webinar where we actually do fairly in-depth training on what intellectual property is, the different mechanisms that you can use to protect it, and so on. So yeah, there's a whole host of things that could be done, but I think most importantly, treat technology transfer as a contact sport, be out there, meet as many people, try to be as helpful as possible. And once you show the value that you can bring, then people generally become more comfortable with coming to you with various types of queries, questions, and so on. In terms of the additional capacity in the offices, I think it's tricky because I think university budgets are spread so thin, so sometimes it's difficult to get posts. But I mean, if we're showing value creation within the system, then university management might be more keen on funding additional posts. I mean, there's also NIPMO, the National Intellectual Property Management Associate or Office, that does provide some capacity development funding for human resources and those kinds of things. So, yeah, there are ways of trying to get more people involved in tech transfer.
Thank you so much, Luan, for the answer. And as a young person, I'll never say no to pizza. I love that initiative. I'll never say no to pizza. So that's a very good one. And I think informal sessions are quite good to attract credibility as well to the researchers. So thank you so much, and we will move to the next speaker. Please note that we will have a Q&A session at the end of when our presenters finish their presentations. And yeah, they will go to the next speaker, and I'm excited about this one because she's actually a product of the ARC. Miss Goingile Dweba, I hope I'm pronouncing your surname right. You will correct me. And she is currently now a candidate patent attorney at Spur & Fisher. So she will be speaking more on protection of IP that Luan talked about in his presentation, where it's one of the core functions that we do as an office. Goingile, welcome, and I can't wait to hear your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mashudu. Let me just share my screen. Hold on. Okay, I will share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it.
We can see it. Do you mind putting on presentation mode?
Is it not on presentation mode now?
No, that's fine, I think. Is that okay?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think it's on presentation mode now.
No, we actually seeing the next slide as well. We just wanted to be able to see this.
Hey, okay.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Let's maybe try it again.
Okay. Is that
That's
better?
perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm a bit technologically challenged. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Goingile Dweba. Okay, so a brief background about my journey to the IP space. I attended the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where I did a BSc in genetics and micro, and then I did my honors in microbiology. And then I think in 2014, I joined the ARC through the professional development program, where I did my master's in plant breeding. I was actually based at the Small Grain Institute in Bethlehem. After I completed that, I went on to start, and I say start, a PhD in molecular genetics. And I think, like Luan said and Mashudu mentioned, a journey into the IP space for most of us, I think, is kind of accidental, because I was in the lab doing my research for my PhD when I just randomly saw a job post at the patent office. So I applied because they required a master's. I'm like, okay, I qualify for this. Let me see what happens. So I joined the patent office as an intern being trained in patent examination as a patent examiner. So that's essentially how I got to know the field of IP. So when I was in the patent office, I obviously found out more about it, and I ended up liking it. And that is when I joined Spur & Fisher as a candidate attorney. I'm currently now doing my LLB through UNISA, and hopes to get admitted as a patent attorney. So that was very brief, and that's the long and short of my journey into the IP space. So like Leon was saying, he spoke a lot on commercialization of IP. I'm just going to touch on exactly what is IP. So intellectual property essentially is just a creation of the mind that can be reduced to something that can be commercialized, that can be exploited commercially. It's the rights that the government confers to the owner or the creator, rather, because it's a creation of the mind. These rights can exist independently from a creator. They can be assigned to third parties, or they can be abandoned. It's essentially something that you now own. You do with it what you want. So mostly it's commercialized, and it's mostly exploited through commercialization. So there are various different types or forms of IP, including patents, designs, copyrights, trademarks, plant breeders' rights, trade secrets, and know-hows. So essentially, a patent is a quid pro quo agreement between the government and the inventor, where the inventor will disclose everything about their invention, and in turn, the government will grant a certificate or a letters patent. So basically, what the certificate does is it protects, or it gives the inventor exclusive rights to exploit this invention. It basically excludes third parties from exploiting their invention. So what can be patented? A device, a machine, a composition of matter, a method, a process, essentially anything that solves a problem in a new and non-obvious manner. So what we mean by new is that the invention must not have been made public, or must not have been disclosed to the public in any way before you apply for a patent. And I know in research, this often gets tricky with the whole phenomenon of publish or perish. And it's very important to point out that, yeah, you're in the lab and you've come up with something that's new, that's brilliant, and it's going to solve. You have a new vaccine, and basically you have a very amazing invention. So you're going to want to publish it. So or rather, do not publish before you apply for a patent protection, because that's basically destroying the novelty. Yes, it will be awesome, it will be published, but then you now put in jeopardy your patent rights. And then inventive step, we basically mean it must not be anything obvious to a person skilled in the art. So what we mean by that is a person in the general field, for example, it must not be obvious to them, oh, you've got a solution. Oh, basically all the general knowledge that you know would have led to this solution. So that's what we mean by inventive step. And obviously, it needs to be capable of being used in trade or industry or agriculture. So the term that you get, or the protection or the exclusivity that you get to commercialize and exploit your invention is 20 years, and it basically excludes other people from making, using, exercising, disposing of, importing your invention. Now, it's important to point out that patents are territorial. There's no such thing as a universal patent. So if you want to have protection in different countries or jurisdictions, then you have to apply in those different countries. So a patent in South Africa does not confer protection all over the world. So yes, the second type of intellectual property is registered designs. So registered designs protect a pattern, a shape, or configuration or ornamentation that is applied to an article. In South Africa, we have two types of designs, aesthetic and functional designs. So obviously aesthetic, as the word says, it's judged solely by the eye. What's interesting is it's not really about does it look nice or does it not look nice. The aesthetic quality is not what is protected, but rather how it looks. And a functional design is dedicated to the function. So sometimes articles or the shapes of articles are necessitated by the function which they're going to be used for, and that is the functional design that you're going to protect. Again, to get registered design protection, your design must be new and it must be original. And in case of functional designs, it must not be commonplace in the art. And with regards to patents have absolute novelty, whereas designs have a 6-month grace period. So I'm just going to give you, okay, so sorry. So we're going to talk about the time period, the design. For an aesthetic design, it's 15 years, whereas for a functional design, you get protection for 10 years. And similar to patents, your design rights exclude others from making or using or disposing of or selling articles that that embody your design in the Republic. So briefly, these are just examples of designs that can be applied to articles. For example, if you can see the boots at the top, the designs are applied to the actual boot. So those designs are not necessitated by function. It's just solely by how it looks. So that's an aesthetic design, whereas the key, the grooves, and for the key are designed like that. They have that specific shape and design to fit with the log. So that design is necessitated by function. And then the next intellectual property right that we're going to talk about is copyright. So essentially, a copyright is protection that people get for their original works that prevents people from reproducing or adapting their works. There's many different types of works that are protected, and these include literary works, artistic works, and basically all that's listed here. I know Leon touched on you're in the lab, and even when you're doing your what's this? Sorry, you're in the lab and you have your manuals. So those are protected by copyrights. So it's basically works that are produced. And then so who owns the copyright? Generally, it depends on what or how the creator who commissioned the creator or the employer, for example, if work was made during the course and scope of employment and you're under a contract, then depending on your work contracts, then the ownership of the copyrights can be determined but that way. But generally, the author is the first owner of the work. And then the exclusive rights, this is what is protected. As a copyright owner, you have the right to exclude others to reproduce your work, to broadcast your work, to publish your work, to perform, in case of music and all that, to perform the work publicly. And then another form of IP is trademark. So basically, this means a mark that is used to, a mark that is used or proposed to be used by a person to distinguish their goods and services from other people using it. So it means a mark means any sign that is capable of being presented graphically. It can include anything from a device, a name, a signature, a letter, a shape. And the purpose of trademarks is, like I said, is to distinguish goods and services of a person from other people, and and the requirements of the requirements to register a trademark is that it needs to be distinctive. Trademarks can last indefinitely, provided that the renewal fees are paid every 10 years. And essentially, trademarks are to prevent others from using an identical mark or a mark that can be confusingly similar to your mark, such that they don't gain an advantage of their work from yours. Okay, another form of IP is plant breeders' rights, which I think is very important. Not that other rights are not, but the ARC, for example, to the ARC. So plant breeders' rights are essentially rights that are granted to a breeder of a new plant variety. So these new plant varieties need to be bred and not genetically modified. So plant breeders' rights are protected by the Plant Varieties Act, and also, like with the patents, plant breeders' rights are territorial. Now, okay, and then a duration of plant breeders' rights is 25 years in case of vines and trees, and 20 years for and 20 years for other plants. Another form of intellectual property is trade secrets and know-how. So essentially, trade secrets are a form of intellectual property that protect valuable and confidential information. They encompass a wide range of commercially valuable information, like recipes, like formulas, manufacturing processes, and the likes. But what makes it different from patents and trademarks and designs is that you do not register trade secrets. So basically, their value is in the fact that they are kept secret. So this slide just summarizes the different types of IP rights that can exist in one product. For example, in this wine bottle, or in this bottle of wine rather, a patent, essentially, this wine was manufactured was manufactured through a process that uses wood chips to preserve. So it's a new process that is protectable by a patent. The rooibos and the honey bush that are used are geographic indications. The actual bottle of the wine is protected by a design. The instructions in the bottle of the wine are protectable by copyright. And as you can see, the picture of the wine is protected by a trademark. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congile, for that presentation and just giving us a very brief introduction of IP and your journey as well in IP and how those also happened by chance. And yeah, but Congile, my question for you is, based on your experience currently where you are, what is the youth's perception of intellectual property? Are the young people more engaging in terms of IP protection?
I would think, I think currently what I would say in terms of the youth is I don't think, especially because I'm mostly focused on patents. Yes, I did touch on the various types of IP, but my focus is on patent law. And what I've found from that is that currently, a lot of people still wonder what is a patent. So I don't think it's, especially with the youth, it's not something that is out there. Like I said, it's something that we just bump across by chance. And not a lot of people are exposed to what a patent is. And we go to university, study science, I want to be a researcher, I want to be in the lab, and it only took, like I say, it only took me until halfway through my PhD to actually know that, oh, wait, what is a patent? So youth-wise, I don't think in terms, especially patent law or the form of IP that is patent, not a lot of people are exposed to it currently.
Thank you so much. I think that is actually a general challenge we have as IP professionals, awareness, and it doesn't matter whether youth or old. I think it's just the same problem that we have. But thank you so much for their presentation, and we look forward to you being a patent attorney one day.
Thank you. I look forward to that too.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Ms. Kinelo Hanani. She is the co-founder of Sogam Revolution Snacks. Now, what Luman touched on was that we do IP protection as a technical transfer officers, but also do the commercialization as well. And what Kinelo will be delving into is that part or some aspects of commercialization where she's actually commercializing IP from a particular university, and she'll be sharing her journey. Ginewa, welcome, and yeah, you can present. Should I present your slides for you, Ginewa?
Yes, can you please? Because I'm also like my previous speaker, I'm a bit technologically challenged. So even if I want to share the screen, I'm not sure if I'll be sharing the slide. Yeah, so if you can, Mashudi, please. Yeah. Hi, I hope everyone can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yeah. With that introduction, thank you to the previous speakers, and thank you to the ARC, Mashudi, and the team for organizing this. I think it's such an important topic in South Africa, and I think the two speakers were also highlighting that, and with yourself. Just a brief introduction about myself. I'm Kinelo Hanani, correctly so, a co-founder of a startup, a company called SR Snacks, which stands for Sogam Revolution. The company was established in 2017 with the mandate or under the principle of commercializing. Like everyone actually in the room, which I think is quite ironic and interesting, I was first working at the Research and Innovation Department at the University of Pretoria. I have a PMCOMM in economics, so I have a commercial background. And so when I started the journey, I was also quite fascinated with the commercialization side. And when I got there, I knew nothing about it. So like everyone else, I share the same sentiment. It's quite a fascinating industry. And because I had a commercial background, when I first interacted with the commercialization project, I thought it was a great opportunity. So the project was looking at SANBio. It was funded actually by SANBio, and it was looking at 3 regions: South Africa, Lesotho, and Botswana. From the commercialization projects, we were able to start these 3 companies, and we are still alive. And the other 2 partners, the companies are also still functioning. The mandate was around a sorghum, which is an alternative to wheat, and we had to clearly define our mission and objective. Mashudu, can you move to the next slide? So we created this product called SoYum. We did trademark in the 3 areas as mentioned. We trademarked in Botswana, Lesotho, and South Africa. The registration was complete in Lesotho and Botswana. In South Africa, it still hasn't been finalized. But the interesting aspect was we were doing this with the guidance sometimes of the TTO office and a legal firm. I will also like to highlight that because, like mentioned, South Africa is a different ballgame in terms of legislation and what commercialization would mean. why I'd like to highlight that is because there's a monetary aspect of exploiting and the social impact. And South Africa is a mixed economy. So it's not clearly defined as to when we say commercial, are we talking about social impact where we just take the research output to people and say that we're working, or is there a justification for a profit motive? And most businesses that are started are actually started with a profit motive. So, Mashuli, can you move to the next slide? We had to clearly define the business, the proposition, which is the brand, and why it was needed. We had an IP already that was signed over to the company, but translating IP or commercial research output to industry or to a company, and particularly in our case, a startup, is very different. Or it's a different ballgame. As in industry, we have regulations and we have brands, or we have what we would know in South Africa as the major players within the market, which is also known as to why there's barriers to entry. And why I'm going back with that story is we had to create a brand. We had to create a brand. We had to register the brand. We had to register the business. And the two had to be separate. So the entity became SR Snacks, and then we had to create a brand, which was the So Yum, which is where the value is for the company. In creating the brand, we had to clearly define what the brand was representing. It was representing South Africa, its uniqueness, its authenticity. And at the time when we were using sorghum, we realized that it was an underutilized crop. So that was the principle of creating the brand, which we were well aware would help to commercialize. And the problem being solved. I know I'm sitting with a youth panel and some researchers, I hope, or people with research backgrounds. In most scenarios and in most cases, and I'd like to use the business as a case study, which is what my opening was about. Most of the time when research is defined as solving the problem, it's very broad. And when it's broad, it's actually looking at different aspects of problem solving or research. And when you take some of that research or IP or knowledge from the university, sometimes the problem being solved is so broad that it's not actually being clearly defined. And as a startup or a small business, we really had to work through what the research was trying to actually solve and what the problem was. The first thing we picked up was it was a localization and industrialization project. So when we speak about localization, our product uses raw materials, particularly from South Africans. So all of our raw materials are sourced locally. And that was the first objective we were looking at. It's around us ensuring that the value chain is speaking to the South African market. The second problem we were trying to solve was the problem of accessibility to different type of products in the market. We know that in South Africa, exclusivity or lack of resources makes it difficult for any ordinary person to find food that they would like, or food that speaks to them or helps them in health issues or disease prevention, which is the important word there. And so what we realized is that 99% of what is found on our shelves in South Africa particularly are wheat products. So the term gluten-free came in as sorghum was a naturally gluten-free. So it's wheat-free and it's naturally gluten-free. But the main objective or problem being solved there was the problem of accessibility and lack thereof in the market. Climate problem. In the research space, what has been happening is we do solve problems. Farming, water shortages were the main concern. So what a lot of research output was looking at was finding alternative ways of farming that reduces the cost of farming, either through electricity or equipment, and most importantly, through the water system. So we knew that with sorghum, what we were providing to the farmers was a solution, or rather creating a demand for sorghum in terms of how it could be cultivated. Spice, can you move to the next slide? And so with a problem, there should be a solution. And what we found with So Yum, the sorghum biscuit, was that we could create an import substitution strategy where we would be able to create a product from start to finish that we would be able to export or supply locally. The second solution to our problem was that we would then be able to create an alternative, healthier snack option or even snack options. But the primary, the first vehicle or the first offering was through the So Yum sorghum biscuits. Then we would also be solving the problem of climate smart crops that we would then try our best as a company to create impact, to creating a demand or a need for products made out of sorghum. Mashudu, please can you move to the next slide? And so we had to define the market and the value. And so we had to determine what we were trying to define the market as another important aspect to commercialization, the market access. And so we had to then decide who we would target and what the value or the offering would be. Primarily, or even as we stand right now, the business is focused at a business-to-business objective or model, and it's all around centered around what the previous colleagues or speakers were saying, that there should be a value proposition and it should really be a monetary one for the business, as we have signed an IP with the university and we need to pay back royalties. So the access to market and a large market becomes both dual. It is economic based, but it's also a public good, and it's in the public interest that businesses such as ourselves or startups are able to penetrate the market and actually make an impact in terms of creating jobs or ensuring that the research outputs from universities through IP is well absorbed and exploited in a way that creates the economic impact that is required in our country. Mashudu, can you move to the next slide? So the global focus then becomes important. I think it goes without saying, when we're introducing novel items or products to the market, the focus is not only local, but it's also international. I think a lot of examples exist, like the champagne industry, the wine industry, locally as well, the rooibos industry. Intellectual property and protecting it as a country then becomes quite critical. And I think networks or webinars such as this, or communicating and sitting down and discussing what needs to be done becomes very important, because when you are dealing with IP, sometimes the focus becomes an international focus. And if we do not have the right legal support, financial support, technical or expert support, I think as South Africans, we're well aware that we lose a lot of the international property to the rest of the world. Yes, Spice, can you move to the next slide? Guys, you'll forgive me. I've known Mashudu for quite a while, so we were colleagues. So we used to call each other Spice, and I hope that's okay with everyone. The commercialization journey, as mentioned, the company was registered and established in 2017. We did get an IP which was transferred to the company in 2018. The product went through various testing, market research, where we did minor tests, initial tests, market tests, getting customer feedback, industry feedback, which was important to understand what the market wants and what consumers want. We are still at a product development phase. We are in partnership with Cape Town Peninsula through a technology station, through the TIA office, as they do have different centers of technology that assist with either piloting or refining some of these products that we hope to commercialize. On a business perspective, the business has been able to get a lease agreement with the Innovation Hub. This becomes important in terms of business development and structuring a business from the startup. What was also significant is the export license that was obtained. This speaks to the end game, or the end in mind, that as a startup, we do see value in the global market. Mashudu, can you move to the next slide, please? I just wanted to highlight some of the milestones that were achieved as a case study, and I hope I am encouraging other young future business owners or people who'd like to get into business. I always say what will be important is how we define the start and to the end. What I mean is, as a generation or young people, we do need to, in the IP space, clearly define what we want to see happening. And I use the business as a case study because it would be in vain if 10 years down the line, we are gathering and having these discussions and no one can assist the next generation to say, if you are commercializing, you start at CICP, you register your company, you move to SARS, or you move to a lawyer. So basically the blueprint is what I'm highlighting. The blueprint should also clearly define from a startup point of view. I know some of my colleagues, the speakers, were talking about in South Africa, they do hand over IP to companies, but there's an issue of startups, the lack of funding for startups, and sometimes it makes the commercialization objective quite difficult because it is reliant on the business being able to execute. Sorry with the background noise. So what I'm highlighting here is the fact that startups do need capital, they need funding, because they need to protect the value of the IP that they receive. So over the course of 2021 till 2022, we were able to raise a second round of funding from SandBio. Their support helped us to create jobs. We were able to in-house and what I mean is employ people in-house to directly work on the business objectives. And that was quite critical. Mashudu, can you move to the next slide? What's also important, and it's information I think is quite important, in the research industry, we do have terminologies such as the technology readiness level or the market readiness level. And this is a document that I think needs to be shared, especially for startups or anyone within the research space, to understand at what level either the business is ready at, the technology is ready at, or the market absorption of the business would be. So in this slide, I'm just showing you two examples of what the company or the startup ASR Snacks has been able to do, and on the commercialization journey where we are still lacking. So the technology readiness level speaks to the product development, where we are still looking at technical experts to assist with the enhancement of the product and other factors of the product that will speak to the market. What I mean is that industry is the one providing us with the level or information as to what type of product sells. So in any invention or in any technology development, that process is important. And then I also spoke to the market readiness level, but there are different technology or readiness levels that need to be observed when you are going through the commercialization journey. As I'm speaking, these are the technical team that we are currently working with. And Dumiso is the manager of the Agri-Food Technology Station. Then we have Ms. Hype, who's also giving us technical expertise. So as mentioned, this becomes a critical factor within the company to get the necessary human resource capacity to move or enhance any type of product. Lessons and challenges learned, I think it goes without saying, the speakers previously were mentioning this, collaboration and integrated support. From a business level, from an ecosystem, it's very important that we speak to one another and engage one another. I know there's talks about technology stations having legal assistance. From a business perspective or small businesses, that support I think is something that is missing, and it's really needed in order to protect IP. Measures and systems, like what I've shared, technology readiness levels, how do we make them formal? How do we help businesses to make this a formal part of their startup journey? What I mean is, how do we integrate these systems or the various stakeholders to ensure that a small business is able to report properly, give feedback properly, and show where the gaps might be through the commercialization journey. The global village and networks, I consider most of the colleagues within the technology space as a global village, and sharing and coming up with ideas or knowledge sharing becomes very important. As I'm sitting here, I've been part of the Royal Academy of Engineering fellowship that trains and helps young people from across the world who are into the research space or IP space or research and innovation space on how to view best practices around the world. Barriers to entry and means to production. This topic is specific to the South African market, as there are high barriers of entry to any industry, as there are specific role players. We deal with monopolies and oligopolies. So all of these create high regulation or barriers to entry, either from a financial point of view, a legal point of view, or even expertise or consultation point of view. Then funding gaps. Like I said, I'm speaking from the business side or the startup side. The funding gaps become very critical in order to drive the commercialization point of view or mandate for the small business. Strategic partners, as mentioned, I don't think this would be possible without the partners from the University of Pretoria, the TTO office, to SanBio, which is a NEPAD SADC funding instrument that was critical in us creating the business. We have the Innovation Hub, Tax Innovation, and the Technology Station. I think this speaks to the mandate of each of these individuals or strategic partners. Then just ending the video or the presentation with a video from the company, and I do hope you enjoy it. I think, Mashudu, you should just press play, and then, yeah. I don't know if there's sound.
Sorry, can you hear the sound?
There's no sound, but I think it's from your side because you are muted.
I'm trying to find, there's a setting, video setting. Does anyone know what this is? I know there's a setting on the video where you have to change. I am struggling to find that setting. Colleagues, do you know how?
No, I think from my side, if there isn't any sound, it is something I think we can share at a later stage. But that was the gist of the presentation.
All right, no, that's fine. We'll share the presentation with everyone else. But thank you so much, Kinole, for your presentation. And this is the time I'll give the opportunity to anyone who wants to ask any questions. Yeah, so Kinole, I think I will start while everyone is still thinking of a question, is that you said something very important about how the importance of technical know-how as an industry person. Now, what is the value of that, and how can, as industry, or how technical people from our side as well, be open to giving the technical information? Yeah, so what is the barriers in terms of commercializing your product and getting that technical know-how?
Yeah. Actually, thank you. That becomes quite a very important question. For me, it's twofold, and I'm not going to answer it because I actually don't have the answer. It's just my experience within the business. I think the research space does work from, especially before the invention disclosure is done, we work from a premises of investigation. So with the know-how or the technical expertise, it's always done from a writing publication point of view. Whereas in industry, knowledge sharing becomes the most critical aspect of moving a business forward. So I hope in me translating that business doesn't work well with individuals that are isolated or who withhold information. If technology if the technology from the standpoint of SR Snacks is going to be translated into industry, we need the relevant actual technical people within the research space to be able to feel comfortable with how do you operate in a business environment where knowledge sharing from a technical point of view becomes the most critical aspect. I hope I'm answering it the correct way.
Thank you. That answered it. Thank you so much. I see questions from Lisedi. You can ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much, Mashudu. And thanks again for Ms. Kinole for the very wonderful presentation. And before I can ask my question, I would first like to congratulate you on Kinole in your business. I'm very much impressed and inspired because of, you are one of the people, encouraging us, especially youth, not to be always employees, but also to be employer, meaning like creating and employment opportunities in a country like ours, where we are experiencing a high rate of unemployment. I'm very much impressed. So my question is about the issue of the climate change here. I remember from the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the SR's snacks, it's well known actually for like it doesn't contain a gluten, that is number one, meaning that it's gluten free. But I'm much more interested on the issue that you also highlighted about the climate change. What I just want to understand what makes your business, to say it's also addressing the issue of the climate change. climate smart crop like? Is it because of you used the sorghum cultivars that are drought tolerance, meaning that it doesn't require a lot of water, and then you also use sorghum cultivars that are also disease resistant, so that there is no need for the application of herbicide, which will also lead to the problem of the health, environmental health. I just want to understand, try to make me understand, the relationship between your business and also the issue of the climate change. I hope you understand my question. Thank you.
Ginelo, this question is for you. Can you hear us, Ginelo?
Hi, sorry, I'm sorry about that. My mic was switched off, but that question came from Lesedi, correct?
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay. Thank you firstly for your question. I was also struggling to hear you, but I must say, for me, doing these things over the internet is always so difficult because I like interacting with people, but I'm really trying my best to bridge the gap, and I hope, yeah, that's just what I wanted to say. Your question around climate smart and clearly defining the business relationship with it. I will say this, because it was IP related, the research output was actually looking at that climate smart crops. I think that was the project, the initial write-up. It was healthy snacks made from climate smart crops. So in the South African context, it's very easy to answer it actually, because we are dealing with cultivation or wheat production, and our company would come in with creating a demand for an alternative, which is the sorghum. And what we know about sorghum is that it's climate smart, meaning it grows in the most adverse climates or conditions. So in terms of drought, or if we're speaking about climate change and how the environment is changing, we're becoming hot in South Africa, and the list goes on. So in terms of that aspect, it becomes a climate smart crop. But I also wouldn't want to speak too much for the farmer or the cultivator. But as I mentioned, it would reduce a lot of the expenses in terms of farming. So for the farmer. So I hope I'm answering that question. But that relationship for the business just becomes that we create a demand for this crop, and we are just creating the product. So the farmer aspect, or someone who's running a farm, would then have to come on board to say, this is why this would be a good alternative for them to farm or to cultivate. I hope I'm answering your question correctly.
Yes, so definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Isidi, for that question. I think I saw another question. Prudence, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, Mashudu. Thank you. I just wanted to ask Kinelwe, I'm not sure if I missed it, but is the snacks available with any retailers? Is it available to the public? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Prudence.
Thank you, Prudence. So yes, it's not available to the retailer. We are at a business-to-business model. We are aggressively looking for a buyer. This is part of the barriers to entry that we are finding. I would like to highlight that the business has been around since 2017. We had this product since 2017, but it's very difficult to penetrate the market. As to what the reasons could be, it's still very difficult for me to answer. But as mentioned, our model is purely business to business. So we've had to stop selling directly to a customer like yourself, Prudence, or a Mashudu who would come to approach me. We are looking for buyers, and that is still something that we are struggling to achieve.
Noted. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that answer, Kinelo. And I just want to add on to what just corroborates what Luan said, was that the tech transfer or the commercialization process is not a linear one. And looking at the strides you've made from since 2017, there are barriers, and we look forward to you breaking those barriers to entry, Kinelo. And all the best with your product and your startup. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our webinar, and I'm really, I hope you've enjoyed the three talks from our speakers. Unfortunately, Luan had to attend to something urgent, but I just want to thank my two speakers. And as we round up this webinar, I would like to ask just one question to specifically to all the speakers: is what would you tell your younger self right now, as we round up the webinar? Ngile, you can go first.
What would I tell my younger self? Honestly, I think I wish I would have discovered IP earlier in life. I always say that. I could have saved myself a lot of time because I love it. So I could have saved myself a lot of time. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that answer. I share the same sentiments. I love what I do as well. So I wish I could have known about this way earlier, you know. But that itself presents opportunity to us as well, for the younger generation as well, to create that blueprint that Kinelo mentioned. So yeah, thank you so much for that answer. Kinelo?
Younger self, I also chuckled at that. But yes, I would say, do not give up, and to not look at challenges as the end, and to keep going. I know sometimes we speak about challenge. Oh, what are you gonna do? No, keep going, and keep pressing forward. Yeah, and challenges are there just to build us. Build me. So that's what I tell her.
Thank you so much. And challenges are part of the journey. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, it's the end of our webinar. And thank you to the speakers and for making time and preparing for your presentation. And also, I just want to thank my unit for coming up with this amazing idea for us to just shed more light into IP and using the focus on celebrating youth and celebrating the speakers as well. And also the attendees, thank you so much for attending and making time. We've way past our time, and apologies for that. But yeah, looking forward to again celebrating this the youth next year with another webinar, or perhaps an in-person one like Kinelo prefers. Yeah, so we've come to the end, and have a good lunch in this very cold Monday, and have a beautiful week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Cheers,
Thank
bye.
you. Thanks, Mashiru. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.